Let's talk about the
Okay.
your sensitivity to radiation. So we already know that you are, for lack of a better word, transmitting energy coming from a higher level.
Hmm.
And how did you start to realize that what I guess you could call negative energies
Hmm.
affect you?
Okay, so I would, you know a lot in hindsight. So I'm going to start from the point that I went, whoa, it was real. And then I started seeing, oh, I've been seeing this for a while and just didn't know what it was. Um, I had a job working for a title company as a notary, and it was part-time, and I could take what I wanted and keep on the writing projects on the side, and it was perfect. But it meant that I had my cell phone in my hand all the time because that's how I captured the assignments. And there's 13 other people competing for them. So the faster you are to get that. So um, the cell phone was in my hand a lot, and it was 4 years old. In August of 2016, all right, well, in February of 2016, I had two visions, and God showed me he was taking that job from me. I was not happy. I was like, because this journey has taken so much, I'm like, really? You're going to take my job too? So I went through 4.5 months of unemployment, but he showed me the visions because he said, I want you to know this isn't you being fired. This is me taking you somewhere else. And so, all right. So now I've still got the phone in my hand because now that's my lifestyle, right? It's in my hand all the time. That's when I said, all right, why'd you get me fired? And he said, clean off your desk. So I cleaned off my desk, and I found a piece of paper that said, you got to write a screenplay. So that's all in the book. So it's a pretty interesting story. So I got the screenplay written thinking that, well, if I write the screenplay that I've been avoiding for 2 years, maybe he'll let me have a job again. So I wrote the screenplay and immediately went out and got an upgraded iPhone. I had had an iPhone 4 and I went to a 5C. And within a month, I started noticing that my hands were aching when I would touch the phone. And I thought, wow, that's weird. These phones, so I ordered a radio frequency safe case from rfsafe.com and got one for each of us here in the house and put that case on there. And my mother and sister couldn't feel anything. They don't know what I'm talking about. Even with that case on and closed, my hand would still ache. And that's when I thought there is something not right here. So I thought, well, maybe I just need a break from the phone. So I held it less, but I was still using it. And that went on for a month. And in October of 2016, I touched the screen of my phone and a pain shot up my left arm that felt like a blood pressure cuff was on too tight, and it stayed for 2 hours. I then started reacting to everything electrical in my world. Being in my bedroom, every time I walked past a light switch right outside of in the hall, right outside of my door, I could feel like this heaviness. And so when I'm doing the healing work, a lot of times I will feel a very dense, heavy, painful energy. And it will dissipate, or I will actually run my hands down my arms and sling it out. And then you go back and get some more. And so that pain I was familiar with, but it felt different. It felt like something about that healing pain felt right. This felt wrong. That's all I can say, is that it just did not feel that it was a healthy, good thing to be. All right. So, one of the first things I did was got online and downloaded an ebook by a guy in France. And is he in France? Yeah, he's in France, but he's from England. His wife took him to France. So y'all are opposite, Mark. Anyway, he had a book called Long-Term EMF Protection, and it's only available as an ebook, but we downloaded it, printed it out. It was 92 pages, and it said, here's the different meters that are available. Here's what you need to know. And my mother locked in. I read this thing where he said, you've got to heal your environment. And so one of the other very first things that someone gave me a piece of info was about an electrical engineer on YouTube. If you look up tracing EMFs in building wiring and grounding, I think is the title. It's a 22-minute little video, and at the very front, it's very technical, but at the very beginning, this man describes how he and a team were hired by California School District to randomly survey 90 schools for EMF. And they were shocked to find out that 95% of the problems were coming from building wiring, not from the technological equipment in the buildings. Mm. So that was a pretty like, wow, you got to heal the environment. So then when we got this other guy's book, and he said, you may need to go through and change out every outlet and switch in your house because they become saturated. And I'm like, we're not doing that. That sounds expensive. That's the thing my mother locked in on. And I will say that when I was ill, the healing gift stopped. I was ill. I didn't have the healthy energy to share with anyone. So I would be drawing from a bankrupt account. This book this Cross Currency talks about an older woman who did healing. And as she got older, it was harder on her. So we are drawing from our own energy bank to do this work. And so even though we're processing, I think, is how I perceive it, because I always felt like energy was coming in from God here and then coming out my hands. And so, what was I telling you? Oh, so we changed out every outlet and switch in this house. We upgraded them to a 20 amp commercial. Now, here's what's interesting. When I cleaned off my desk, I found a business card for an electrician, and I had written across there, very honest man. So I pick up the phone and call him and tell him I need an electrician, and he comes over, and he brings this younger guy with him, and I had them watch that electrical engineer 22-minute video because I said, this is what we're doing. Here's the meters. I'm going to show you what I've already found. If I had not taken them through this process, they would have had no clue. They would have thought she's batty. They told me that. If you had not had the meters to show us. So we have now an entire industry of electricians who don't understand that they can actually give people cancer and make them ill by doing their job wrong. They're not being taught. And so got these guys on board. Well, they're here maybe the first time. And Joe says, the older man, he says he's recovering from tailbone cancer. And I'm like, wow, that's a weird one. How many often do you hear tailbone cancer? And so then he puts his cell phone in his back pocket.
Yeah.
And I went, Joe, hello. And I had a little conversation with him, and he turned white. And I was like, I'll just leave you with that, you know. And so I left the room and let him do his work. Well, he and his coworker must have been talking about it, because his coworker comes up to me and said, hey, my brother had the same kind of rare cancer that Joe had. And I said, really, where was his? And he said, right here behind his ear. Well, what's he doing? He's talking on a phone or wearing a Bluetooth. Right. And so I said, are y'all seeing the connection? And he said, we haven't until now. I now know. So I put on Facebook that information, and several people commented. I had cancer from my cell phone. And so I put up a post that said, I now know 5 people with cancer from their cell phones.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine in Houston is a doctor's wife, Virginia Young, replied, I know dozens. So if you go on PhoneGate on YouTube and just type in PhoneGate, you'll see that these phones are putting out 3 to 4 times the radiation that the manufacturers reported. It's, as usual, it is corruption and payoffs and campaign donations. And so
actually I can speak directly to that. Back in the 90s, I was at Plymouth University, and as one of the studies there, I did a couple of electrical degrees.
Oh, cool.
And a classmate of mine, Guillaume, and we decided that we would just see if there was any truth in the suspicion that back in the 90s that cell phones were dangerous to life.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, well, how can we do this? How can we show that it's dangerous to life, or, you know, it's not healthy for a living organism?
Mm-hmm.
So we had the idea that we would get a colony of fruit flies. We would divide that colony in half as much as we could. We put one colony in a tank that was shielded from all radiation. And we put another colony, the other half of the colony, in a tank that had just a 1 watt, not even that, 100 milliwatt, 900 meg signal going into it, 24 hours a day. And we let it go for, I think, about 3 generations of fruit flies to be born. And the one that was shielded, no real change. The one that had been subject to the radiation, just the sort of a fairly low-grade radiation at the time, had numerous die-off. The progeny were deformed, and the actual numbers of fruit flies went down compared to the one that had been, left alone. Mm-hmm. So there you go. And when I say deformed, I mean enormously deformed.
When this first started with me and I would tell people what was going on, it was a very interesting social experiment, my friends, because I watched because I read energy, I can see way more than their face.
Yeah.
And I would see them go from fear, and they would shift into complete denial. Like, I do not want this information.
No, it's going to.
And I mean, it was like, I'm like, whoa, we're in a weird place now. I mean, it's one thing to not want to drink a Coke or what, but this is it's changing us. And so when I was first started telling people, every time I would tell the story, I would get nauseous in my gut, and I would hear God say, you have no idea what you're doing to the children. You have no idea.
Mm.
And in this, there's a man on YouTube, I've forgotten his name, but he's a microwave weapons expert for the Royal Navy. And he says anyone that puts Wi-Fi in school should be hung.
Mm.
He said, you are damaging the ovaries of the girls, and it is a genetic damage that will be handed down from one generation to the next. It will not ever go away.
Mm.
The other thing that I learned during this journey is that, and this was on the World Health Organization's website, believe it or not, is that all of this energy that we are producing, electrosmog, I think is an accurate name for it, is collecting in our atmosphere. It will not dissipate. It will not dissipate. So I went over and looked up the Earth. The Earth has a pulse.
Yep.
And that pulse, they found out about the time they discovered the MRI technology, they found out that the Earth has a pulse and that you can measure it. And it's what, 7.83?
It's around about 8 hertz.
Okay. So, and they found out it matches the human brain perfectly.
Yeah.
What's very disturbing to me about this is that we have 3 memory care centers that have popped up within 6 minutes of this house in 3 different directions in 3 years. Mm-hmm. This is not normal. This is not normal, and I believe it makes sense to me because they said that when they first discovered this Schumann resonance, they said when you have a disc inside of a disc, which here's the atmosphere and then here's the surface of the Earth, so you've got a disc and a disc, they said there's always going to be a tension field. And that tension field is 7.83 or 38 or whatever it is that matches the human brain. So I'm like, and they said that when they first discovered it, it was very easy to get a reading on. And now they have a hard time finding that signal. If that's true, our brains are going to start having a hard time finding their signal. Right. And what's very concerning to me is there's a video on YouTube of the FCC commissioner talking about 5G, and the only thing missing from this man is drool. running down his lips as he's saying, we're not going to study it. We're not going to regulate it. There is too much money at stake. We need to be on the front lines, blah, 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 blah. And I'm telling you, if we start sitting back and letting them put these little mini cell towers every 500 to 800 feet down our streets, and we do nothing, a bunch of us will die. Mm-hmm. A bunch of us are going to die. So we are in a weird, it's just kind of interesting. But I saw in my research a tree that they took a picture of that's outside of an office building, and the entire side of it that's close to the building is dying. Mm-hmm. It's a 6-year study is what it said, showing that Wi-Fi is killing all living things. Mm-hmm. So it's very disturbing. It has absolutely affected my willingness to even do the healing work anymore, because if I'm going to do healing work on them and they're living with Wi-Fi blaring in the house and they've got a cell phone and they're, all the other gadgets that we have, I would imagine most homes have wiring errors. We found stuff in this house that it's a wonder, and I'm so grateful. Because Mark, if I was not living with my mother, and I can see how it was affecting us, we just didn't see it. What I heard was, I was doing a lot of writing in my bedroom, but I could hear mother and sister talking in the living room, and I could hear anger, this agitation in our tone, and I thought, wow, are we that emotionally damaged that we're just angry? And now that the house is healed, it's gone. Sweden hardwired all of their schools. They're not talking about it, but they hardwired all their schools because they saw the grades going down and they saw an agitation among the students. So we're not headed in a good way here, and I don't know how to stop it. But, if somebody wants me to do healing work, I'm like, what's the point? Are you going to give up your cell phone? Because I'm working against so many things. It's kind of the same way I felt about, I wouldn't do healing work on people that are drinking diet. So if you're drinking soft drinks, if you're not on a healthy track, I will not supplement. I'm just not, there's no point. And so I feel the same way about the energy work now, that we have brought in so much man-made energy that we're basically telling God, we don't want your energy. We don't believe in that stuff.
Right.
Oh,
but you could also see it another way, which is you could help people get cleaner through your work and counter the negative energies and help them get better.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe that God is telling us that we're going to have to make a choice. There is a safer way to do technology. And I'm doing it. I'm sitting on a grounding sheet. I've got my feet on a grounding sheet. I sleep on a grounding sheet. I'm grounded about 95% of my day. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I honestly believe, from what I know, this stuff is so toxic. And there's a book called Earthing by Clint Ober that when all this first started, I was laying in my bed and I was fussing at God. I was like, are you serious? One more thing. I'm like, and this is a big thing, God. I'm not only unemployed, I'm unemployable. I can't go into an office where they have computers, Wi-Fi, fluorescent lighting, and everybody in the office has a cell phone. There is complete denial about this. And there's no medical code. So I can't get disability, which would take 5 years anyway, and cost me thousands of dollars to go to the one doctor that I know of that has an environmental health clinic that I can go in to be tested. So we're on a bad road. We're on a bad road.
As a woman, and we had a little funny thing going on before we started recording the show, but you were fussing with something I will let you describe. But there's an issue that women, there's an issue about women putting their cell phone in their bras. So,
and I have an aunt who got cancer in her breast, and the the outlay of that phone was exactly, she said you could trace the phone where she used to keep it in her bra. So and it showed up 20 years later, 10 years later.
And I hear a lot of young women do that because,
Well,
you can't have a bag anymore, so you have to carry your cell phone.
Now, if you watch, Alain, everybody has them in their pocket.
Yeah.
Everybody sticks them in their back pocket. The waitresses, everybody. I'm like, I think we're going to see an epidemic of cancers. These phones were not even tested to be next to our body. When we hit that user agreement, I accept, when you get your brand new phone, all of that fine print that you didn't read, it says, don't put this close to your body. And yet I'm watching television shows. They've got them up to their head. They've got them in their back pocket. They've got them in their front pocket. Laptops, laptops are so toxic because our hands to be on the keyboard are right over the mechanism. So you're filling up your body with oxidative stress free radicals. So I now have a separate keyboard that's grounded. The laptop is grounded and sitting away from me. So, yes, going forward, I believe I think I'm not going to be seeing clients, at least for a while. I am available for phone consultations. But again, I tell people, if you haven't read the book, I don't even want to talk to you. They're not on the same page. They need to have something invested. We live in a world now where people are so narcissistic. Everything is about them. And so and they want everything fast, and they want everything now, and they want it free. Yep. And so I'm like, I that's not the road I'm on, and it's a very unpleasant role to be in with somebody.
For me, the saddest part is when you see little kids in their strollers looking at tablets, playing with tablets.
Yeah.
Or using tablets. It used to be television was the babysitter. Now it's the tablet.
No, and we're damaging our DNA. That's the truth of it. We're damaging our DNA. And so I'm kind of at a place, I think it's kind of interesting because I feel like my job going forward is to teach. That's what I think I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to speak and teach. And to me, the gift of writing a book that took me 23 years to live through the lessons and cost me everything, to not read it is almost offensive. It's, I just don't want to read your book. I just want to come to you and have you wave your little magic hands. It's like, no, go away. Go away. I'm not. And I'm actually at a stage in my life now I can wave somebody off knowing they're probably going to pass away. But we get choices in this life. And, for the longest time, I was a people-pleasing Christian that felt like I had to heal the world, and I'm over that now. I'm here to teach, and I'm here to speak, and I'm here to share my experiences for those that want to know. But those that are of that mindset, I just, even Jesus told a woman that I've come only to the house of Israel. And, so there was a part of him that pulled away from some situations. So he ended up, she did get healed because she appealed to him and said, even the dogs get crumbs. And he finally had compassion on her. But I think to just think that Jesus just healed everyone. I'm like, no, he said, go and sin no more. And that means to me, after many healings, he said that. And to me, that means that he's saying, you have your part that you're contributing to this illness. Go fix that. Go be responsible. And he says, or something worse may come upon you. And so one of the most disturbing things is I did a healing on this woman in California. She did not even know I was doing the work. I had posted a testimonial, and a friend of hers saw it and went over and private messaged me and brought Christina into the message and said, this is my friend Christina, and she's got cancer, just in case you feel inclined. And So I was getting in bed one night, and I learned that if I will go and kind of basically introduce myself to them energetically and then come back later, that in the meantime, it seems like their energetic body, that part of us that I really think is connected to God directly. And if we, if we turn that channel off, if you've got a radio station and God's at 98.6 and you are dialed down to 94, you're not going to hear him as clear. So you got to get over to 98.6 where he is to hear the messages. So I've learned that if I would go and basically, and I did, I went and said, I got in bed and I did my little thing. And I said, Christina, I'm going to come see you in the morning and be bringing God with me. And so I just said, amen, and went to sleep. Well, the next morning I woke up and it was about 7:30, and I, for some reason, pulled the covers up over my head and got really almost in a little cocoon. And I went into my little state and I said, Father, this is for Christina. And I started vibrating. Now, I've never had this happen. I started vibrating pretty radically, and I was like, whoa. And I started crying, and this whoop, and it just, whoop, it stopped. And I went, whoa, what was that? So I typed a message on my cell phone to the girls on that thread, and I said, I just had a really profound healing experience. Y'all let me know, So it was 5:30 California time. So a couple of hours later, Christina wakes up, sees the messages, and goes, I am so glad you let me know. She said, I didn't know what happened. She said she woke up at 5:30 in the morning, vibrating and shaking violently, and woke up and threw up. And she said, I said, well, what is your condition? She had already had breast cancer, done all the chemo, the radiation. Normally, I wouldn't even do work on somebody that's taken that road because I'm like, you made your choice. There's so much damage there at that point. And so, and I'm not being paid for this. So, it really takes there needs to be some incentive sometimes for your time spent. And so, and just to be involved in this story. So anyway, but I don't make a big deal out of it. I'm more interested, kind of like Mark, this is my own experiments, that I'm watching and learning from. So as it turned out, this woman was literally on her deathbed, and was bounced out of the bed, had her vibration raised, and she went and threw up. The other thing that I found interesting, and this testimonial is on the blog under February of 2016, the girl that told me about her was also awakened shaking. So this healing happened so profoundly that it brought two people into it unintentionally. I never even mentioned the other girl. And I've laughed now. I wonder if the healing power was needed so much that I wasn't enough. So the love that her friend had for her, which is a very high vibration, brought her into it. I feel like God may have used her as a repeater station or something. and she's out there in California. So I just found that fascinating, just fascinating. So the woman hops on a plane and goes to Chicago and sees her family for 3 weeks, and she's just doing great. And I'm like, wow, God. And I'm like, I hope this doesn't get out, because it could take over my life. Hey, do me. And so a couple of months go by, and she starts posting that she's going back to the doctor and she doesn't feel well and blah, blah, blah. And she died. So I was like, wow, what was that about? Well, then I got sick. Okay, so that happened in February of 2016, and I think in June or July or August, she died. And so then I got my allergy to the phone and all my electrical environment, And so I wrote her friend and said, here's what's going on with me. And I keep feeling that Christina died because she's got her cell phone, the cell towers, and And this screenshot is also on the blog where her friend wrote back and said, oh my gosh, you must have been reading my mind. I even told my mother that, and I drove over to her house, and she's living by all of the HARP towers.
Oh, wow.
and there's 2 cell phone towers nearby. So you see what I mean, Alain, is that if I do this healing work and I bounce somebody out of their deathbed against all of my own rules about working on anybody with chemo and radiation as a history, and they go back to their same diet, relationship, and environment and habits, then what caused it in the first place is still there. We have to fix the root cause.
But at the time, you didn't know there was so much radiation in her life.
No, I did not.
No.
I did not. And I believe God took me down that road because he was about to show me it doesn't matter if you do the healing work if they pick up their cell phone and got the Wi-Fi blaring in the house and 2 cell towers out their window and living, 3 miles from the heart towers.
Yeah.
So we need to really stop and look as a culture at what we want moving ahead. Do we want more? Do we want 5G or do we want God?
Right, but
So you've got a choice. The choice, if I've understood it right, you've got a choice. You've got 5G or 1G.
You got 1 real G and 5 demi-Gs. 5 not so healthy Gs, yeah.
But keeping in mind that we live in this society and like it or not, for example, when I drive for rideshare companies, I have to use a phone. It's not on my ear. It's down there. It's about 2 feet away from me. But you mentioned yourself once that you could now work in an environment with the cell phones and radiation. So you couldn't drive for rideshare companies. So for a lot of people, and I'm not talking about the young people that think that they cannot live without their cell phone, but for people that, for example, like me, that need their cell phone for their jobs, what would your recommendations be?
One of them is they say don't ever, and I know you're talking about your situation, but for the people that can, do not ever turn your phone on in the car. They said it's like bringing a little mini cell tower into a metal can with you. And I'm like, oh, geez, that makes sense. The other thing you can do is put it on airplane mode when you're not using it actively. I highly recommend these RF safe cases. That man has his own story of how he believes this technology killed his baby. I think she lived 15 hours. His story is on his site. And I think she was born with spina bifida, where the spinal column's outside of the body. And so, but he believes that the cell phone technology and Wi-Fi, microwave and radiation in general in his environment is what caused her deformities, Mark, that you were talking about. So, there's probably safer. Tesla makes me think there's safer ways to have the toys that we have, but we live in a world now where corruption and payoffs and shortcuts are more enticing. So until the consumers demand something safer, we're not going to get it.
Well, the thing you got to remember about Tesla is that he was really working with, or moving towards working with, a different type of energy.
Okay.
It was sympathetic to living organisms rather than destructive.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because that's one of the questions on my list. And I actually feel like moving forward that, this is the first, here's a really great book called Dirty Electricity. And this is by a doctor named Dr. Samuel Milham. It's just a small little booklet, but the very first line in this book says, I have written this in an urgent attempt to warn you. He makes the connection between just the inherent qualities of bringing electrical things into our world correlates with our disease that we have got. So.
And that leads to another source of radiation, which I luckily do not own, is a microwave oven.
Right.
I've been fighting against microwave ovens. My son even offered to buy me one because he thought that must have been a mistake. It must have been a mistake that I didn't have a microwave. Say, no, I don't want a microwave, and I don't want to nuke my food, and I don't want this kind of radiation around me. But at the time, I wasn't even aware of the radiation issue. I was more aware of you can't put any kind of food in there and expect it to survive or to be how do you say, full of life, and it basically kills all the life out of the food.
Yeah, it does,
How would you address that issue? Because God knows microwave ovens are everywhere.
You know what? I've been without a microwave now since 1989. And it was one of the first things when that Jewish mother presence was with me. Every time I'd walk by my microwave, I'd get this queasy feeling in my gut, that's the Holy Spirit, going, And I finally was like, I stopped in front of it and I was like, you got a problem with this? And it was like, yeah, it needs to go. And I'm like, it's out of here. What I've learned is that when we just adjust, we figure it out. I'm still eating heated food. We lived before microwaves.
Right.
I am actually really grateful that I'm allergic to my cell phone because I don't have one anymore. And it was kind of an answer to prayer because I saw where God was taking me. And I was like, if you even do half of what you're saying you're going to do, I can't think of anything more horrible than having a cell phone. Because everybody can reach you. And one of the first joys that I had of going, no, I don't, it almost gave me breast cancer. If I did not know what to do with baking soda and iodine, I would be neck deep in cancer right now. I will say baking soda, iodine, and grounding. And just the healing effects of being outdoors, barefooted. In order to get well, a huge part of my recovery was get outside. Put your bare feet on the ground and your naked eyes in the light because the sun is even frequency. So when we take in that healing frequency, it helps our body heal. So I hoed up 1/4 acre of stickers. My mother's backyard had become overrun and she had a short fence that we took down that wasn't needed anymore. And I just looked out there, it was 1/4 acre of stickers. And I was like, I'm hoeing that up. And her and my sister thought I'd lost my mind and I hoed them up. So it's now beautifully covered with green ryegrass and that's where I spend my time. And I can hear God out there better. When I'm outside barefooted, he's chatty. So, it's another thing. We've got to get in his environment. When we're surrounded by all of this stuff, it affects our frequency. And so we've got to get back to nature. We've got to I made a graphic the other day that says, we live in man-made buildings, wearing man-made fibers, eating man-made food, breathing man-made air under man-made lighting. And when we get ill, I said our bare feet rarely touch the earth and we're surrounded by energy foreign to the human body. And when we get ill, we go to a person who lives exactly like this, who's going to give us a pill to heal our disconnect. I'm sad that I was ever that foolish. So It's hard to believe that I ever bought into that logic. And I'm just a reminder, perhaps, that there's options and we can get back to nature and get back into connection. And I believe when we spend adequate time outdoors with our bare feet on the ground conversing with God, that when we come back in, we'll be more productive. So it's finding a balance in this. But Mark, I would love to talk to you some more about Tesla and what you knew about him, or if you have any directions to send me, because I really feel like after receiving your questions yesterday and seeing where you wanted to take this interview, I started, thinking, well, I have to share with you. I don't feel led to work on individual clients anymore. I will do phone coaching and that kind of stuff. But God's been telling me for 2 years to grow food. And in the 3rd year, he added, and get as many people growing food as you can. So that almost sounds like a warning. And I feel like it's time for me to heal and me to teach, and that I can serve more people doing that than working one-on-one. And even those that want to work on one-on-one, I'm going to say you have to read the book or there's an $800 surcharge. I might do something like there's an $800 penalty.
So are you thinking about doing leading classes? I
am. We have a beautiful tiki hut that we accidentally built in the backyard, about twice the size that it was supposed to be because somebody didn't talk to somebody. So as this thing was being built, and it's 30 feet up in the air, and it's got these hammock chairs around it, and I'm watching that thinking, God, what are you doing? And I kept feeling like this is a classroom. I even think that me hoeing up the 1/4 acre of stickers and putting down beautiful grass, I want to bring people and have a barefoot class. I want to reconnect because I want them to see and feel what we're missing. And then perhaps they can be part of a food growing operation. My mother's got a huge old tennis court on the back of the property that's not used. And I think I need to put a vertical food growing system up there. And I don't have the first clue about it, but I didn't have the first clue about being a healer or writing a book either. So we'll just go forward and see what unfolds. And it seems, if you show up, stuff just seems to happen. So I'll move that direction. But I'm very fascinated by energy. That's why I bought this book. It will be the first of many that I read, and I hope to be able, because going forward, what I'd like to see, one of the interviews that I had with Lloyd Burrell, who wrote that long-term EMF protection book, he too had an event with his cell phone, and he said he was a very light user. But he said he put the phone up to his head when it rang one day, and a pain shot through his head, and he started reacting to everything.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've said to people in the past, when I've been, I've never been a heavy cell phone user, not for a long time. And sometimes, people ring me, very rarely, and I say, look, I can't talk any longer. Maybe after 2 minutes, I can't talk any longer because my head's warming up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It
You
does.
could almost hear the incredulity on the other end, but it does. I can feel my head warming up, and that's enough.
Mark, I almost cry when I see videos of little babies on their cell phone and they're talking to daddy. And I always post on there, get that cell phone away from that child.
Yeah.
I'm that person on Facebook. But I just,
if ever I have to use it, I always try and put it on loudspeaker. Because that way it's it's arm's length. And
yes, I did for a long time, and I wore earbuds, and these are air tube earbuds, and so
I noticed that they're very good.
Yeah, there's things to do. Grounding is really important. You can even ground your vehicle, Alain, which might offer you some protection while you have to have the phone on. I have a static strap on the truck, and when the truck comes to a stop, that static strap's in touch with the ground and it discharges. And I'm also sitting on a grounding pad that I have an alligator clip snapped to the seat mount, which is part of the truck. So, and I can feel that grounding in the truck. It will make you feel a little calmer. And so you're basically taking in, because the earth is, what's happening is disease free radicals, as we all know, causes disease, and that causes inflammation. And so the free radicals are a group of molecules that are missing an electron. Well, we get those missing electrons from the earth, but we have to be in contact. Our bare skin needs to be in contact with the surface of the earth. And so it brings in all of these free electrons that satisfy those free radicals, and then the oxidative stress levels will drop in the body, and the body can heal itself. And
well, you know what? I feel there's a lot more we should talk about this, and we're already at the 2 hours mark. I think it's time to maybe plan another discussion.
I would love that. If you would let me do some reading, I'll have some more things to contribute. Because
it'll probably be in a few months, 2-3 months from now, because I think we have a lot more to address. But
I agree.
Definitely follow up.
I'd like to come back and chat with you, Kathy, about why older people get less energy.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a long discussion, but it's something that, I think is quite relevant for a lot of people. So
no, if you're an electrical guy, I want to pick your brain big time. I would love that.
And I could probably use some practical advice as well on this thing. And other ways to protect myself.
One thing
I'm a very practical guy, so I need practical advice.
Put it on airplane mode as much as possible. I know that people need them, but put it on airplane mode as much as possible. Get a safe case for it. You can there's on lessemf.com. Has tons of little bags. It's a blocker bag and all kinds of things.
Right. I'll private message.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because I'm not It's probably an effect of radiation, but my auditory memory is not as good as it used to be. So
Okay.
all of this stuff goes in and goes out pretty fast. So, but I'm very good at reading and absorbing from reading.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So, well, we have to give Mark a little chance to say something.
No, I think we've had a huge amount of information from you today, Kathy. Thank you for that.
Oh, good. Good.
So
we could go on for hours, but I think it's probably time we said our goodbyes.
Okay.
And how? Tell us about your books, where we can find it, and the address of your blog so people can go to it.
Okay. It's gettingwellgodsway.wordpress.com.
Okay.
And the book is on Amazon, but if you just type in the title, any bookseller online, a lot of online booksellers have it. So let's see. And I'm on Facebook. There's a page for the book, Getting Well God's Way. Okay. And that's kind of the best place to reach me. I'm almost always, well, I check Facebook often, so it's a very easy place to reach me. But the blog blog's kind of interesting. There's not a lot of articles on it. It's more of just validating what God's doing on this journey. So.
All right, cool. So thank you again, Kathy, for being on the Low Carb Paleo Show. And as we say in Texas, à votre santé, yo.
Now you have to tell me what that means.
Yeah. À votre santé, it means to your health in French.
Okay. Oh, great.
It's typically what French.